Alright, hey guys, this is Rich. I am doing a screencast for FullSpace. For those of you who do not know, what I'm doing here is a system integration. Okay, so let's review what we're supposed to do in a screencast. Just pull it up. Okay, so the milestone here is to basically integrate network function to make this a multiplayer game. And the way we're doing that is we're going to incorporate Photon and use their servers to host a two-player game here. And that's what I'm going to demo today. So let's demo the functionality. So let's start this. We're going to go and let's get roughly to the same screen so we're not at vastly different places. You might notice that until we've actually joined the server, these won't come online. So I will host on this side and join on this side. And you'll notice there are two of us. Okay. And just to demo that we can do things like die. You'll see the lives disappear there at the top. Now I did this group lives. We have our own ships and everything else, but lives are a group activity, and just to show that this moves as well. Okay. And there we go. Okay, so you can see very basically there that the ships were the same, the meteors were different. I decided not to make everything exactly the same, but basically the enemy ships and our ships were network objects, and everything else I did as local objects, because you don't want to make everything network objects. Okay, so just to quickly go into the code that I changed. A lot of it was the onCreate and onDestroy functions, but you'll also see I had to change so that you're only controlling your ship if Photon is working, and otherwise if you're in single player mode, that is if you're not connected, you control whatever ship there is. So the update position function is the function with all the controls. Just going through. I'm not going to work you through all this code because there's a lot of it, but I'm just going to show where we had to make some changes. Firing and shooting and those kinds of objects, I also left be locally. I suppose there's an argument you could make that the missiles should be network objects, but I didn't do that yet. Either. But okay, so let's start here. This is the main game, the main script for when you start. Let me zoom in one more. Level 1. So, okay, if the player starts, basically what'll happen normally is we instantiate a bunch of objects, but what we're doing here is, in the alternative, is on join room, meaning if you're joining the room, we're creating your ship and basically giving you a spawner. So that, basically if there are more players, we also want more enemies. I slowed down each spawner a little bit in the other scripts, but you'll also see we're creating these as photon objects, so they're being created on the network. So they do have a cumulative effect. So let's head over. Where did the ships spawn from? Did they spawn from enemy controller basic? I want to say. I didn't have time to memorize all these scripts. I only went through and corrected, or expanded on them. So I've only been working on this project for about a week now. Week and a half. Enemy generator, that was the script. There we go. Okay, so on do spawn, we had to change this. So originally what was happening here, so normally what's happening is we just use an index game object with the regular instantiate function. But as you know, with photon network dot instantiate, you have to pass through a string instead of a game object, and that string retrieves the like named thing in the resource folder. So what I did instead of using an index is I used if, else if, and I suppose I could have also used switch in case, but in either event, basically, and I replaced the index array with, a similar test, so that, you're creating, depending on what the number is that's randomly generated, you're creating different ships throughout. So the effect is similar to what is happening here. We just had to change it because of how Photon Network Instantiate works. Yeah, now you see we'll also, just up here, real quick, this is the speed at which they generate. In the update function, naturally, basically once the timer, delta time timer goes above time limit, which is of course set at as a random range between time min and time max. On single player, that's between 1 and 4 seconds is the time that they generate. I did between 3 and 8 seconds, so that slows it down a fair deal. But of course, that makes it between, you'd presume that, if you're roughly, this is kind of rough math, we have twice as many enemy spawners, then we can divide those by 2, so it's between roughly 1.5 and 4 seconds. And, that gets even faster if we add another player. Yeah, that's something I think in a more full version of the game you could turn this over to the players and they could play around with it a little in maybe a settings type range or type thing. Okay. So again here I did some things with just along the same lines. Okay, this was just a test I was running. And you'll notice when I send you the build that right now there's just a diagnostic button in the level scene that was just letting me know what was going on and where the problems were in any given thing. Okay, so we already went over how we solved that. Okay, that we covered. Okay, and okay, so here's the script again. If we're not connected to the network, or until we're connected to the network, I don't want anyone playing with anything or touching it. So until that point, until that's true, we're going to make those buttons false and convey that by making them unpressed. Then once we are connected, we switch over to true and they become pressed. So, okay. And text is just an input that allows us to create and join like rooms. You know, if there's nothing there, we just let them, if they leave that blank, we just have them join a random room. And then load the level that we want on the network. Okay, and I think that pretty much covers the changes I made. Let me just make sure I covered everything. Oh, silly me. Okay, and at the same time, what you have to do then on the, and what I did, of course, in the resources folder, I'll just take one object. We've got plenty of them, but to use an example, because what we're projecting is collisions and transforms, what you do is you have to add the photon view script and then the controllers for each of those. Photon transform view, photon animator view, and photon rigid body view. And make sure that all aligns. And of course I did that for everything, and that streams over the network. You can also custom script, which you'll see there's a little of that there, but I tried to minimize how much of that I did. Okay, so okay, I'm going to cut this off here, and then I'm going to create another video with discussing anything I